Hey guys, and welcome back to some more Economica. So let's continue reading because where we last left off, we managed to meet up with Barton, and aside of all the more financial learning and stuff. So let's continue reading. I thought that was perhaps it was because it was my first time meeting him. However, his handshake when we parted was enthusiastic and long. Tonight was great. I'll email you again. He even dropped me off all the way over at the main street in the 6 outer section. Around us were all trucks and personal cars, so a black limousine was totally out of the blue. I had to say I couldn't help feeling proud of myself letting everyone see me shaking hands with Barton in front of the limo. I watched the limo until its tail lights disappeared into the depths of the streets, then pretty much skipped my way back to the church. It was already 11. I'd likely get into a whole lot of trouble if I carelessly let myself get caught by the police, but there were still a lot of people walking around at this hour. I chose paths with as many pedestrians as possible, ran through them, and then switched over to a back alley halfway. Today was the best day of my life, and it wasn't because of some petty reason like having had Barton pay for everything. Rather, it was because I had just a small glimpse of the super high-class world of Newton City and walked its streets. The upper echelons of Newton City met the upper echelons of humankind. Barton was the real deal, both in wealth and as an investor, and it was that kind of person who called out to me. I was acknowledged. Oh man, this is too good to be true. While walking the quieted down residential streets, I gritted my teeth and struggled to hold back the temptation to shout out. And thus, getting into high spirits, I started jumping from rooftop to rooftop until I arrived at the church. There, I bumped into Lisa, who looked like she was drinking at a table in the yard on the second level. Well, I wasn't really obligated to tell Lisa that I was going to be walking out late at night, but I felt a bit of guilt. However, after glancing at me, Lisa sighed, drank the wine in her glass, and then got up from her chair. Come in properly through the door. What about dinner? Already had mine. Didn't I tell you before? I know, but with how happy you looked, I was wondering if perhaps you were hungry. After she said that, my stomach did growl. I had immediately thought I had gotten full before, but perhaps it was just because I was nervous. I'll eat. Okay, so come down. Having said that, Lisa returned to her room and shut the window. I did as I was told. I went down to the first floor, entered the church, and headed towards the main residence. The lights being left on had a certain tranquility to it in the early hours of the night. Lisa came down shortly and started warming up a meal for me. Where did you go? It didn't sound like she was grilling me, so I answered it honestly. Newton City. To meet a friend? I gathered the reason for the pause from Lisa's slightly teasing smile on her face when she turned around over her shoulder to look at me. Like I'd have friends. I figured you'd say something like that. Hal, well then, a girl. Quit joking. You wouldn't even believe that. Okay, sorry. Lisa shrugged and returned to cooking. Little comedy put out, I guess. And then, when she laid out various reheated dishes on the table, I was drawn in by the smell and came to the table as well. I guess that feeling of Satanness was nervousness, after all. I dug into the food greedily. I have a bad habit of prying into people's personal matters, so I would have loved to ask more, but... Digging into the pilaf, I was chomping on my food and looked at Lisa wordlessly. I'm going to stop because you get angry. Good choice. I nodded, and Lisa poked my head lightly. Besides, I thought to myself, it wasn't like she was my mom, but she wasn't pushy and it wasn't annoying or anything. Well, she does treat you like a mom, of course. Well, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. I got up and looked at Lisa because she had quite a serious tone in her voice. What is it? Okay, when you left today, did you pass Chris on the way? Oh yeah, that big ass dude. That was Chris's dad, right? Yep, he sure was a badass dude. Quit copying me. Lisa laughed happily at my comment. Well, it's about that. Oh, what was that? It didn't look like a delivery. Well, you see, Lisa was squirming with her words. I collected the scattered pillow into my mouth as I wondered what she was going on about. She was glancing left and right, and then timidly spoke like Hagana. Chris's family wants to entrust to you their savings. What? I instantly exclaimed back, throwing rice everywhere. Lisa made a face and drew back, but I didn't care and asked her again. What did you say? Hey, watch what you're doing. Well, they heard about what you guys were doing from Hagana. I stared at Lisa collecting the rice kernels, and eventually she started spilling the beans. Chris's family also borrowed money from Toyama. In other words, you know what I'm getting at, right? Chris, who'd wear clothes that didn't fit her and would help out with deliveries while skipping out on lunch. Her family. I quickly recognized what would drive them to entrust all their money to me, as well as the pitiful state they were in. They're different from us since they're running a business. It would be bad for their money to instantly disappear, since they wouldn't be able to restock. Besides, there isn't a single person in these parts who would be able to pay back a loan instantly. Therefore, they figured that if it was all going to be taken away, they might as well choose a way that could potentially earn them some return. The flavor of the pilaf turned to nothingness. The pilaf had been loose, and the feeling of chewing on them was great, but now it felt like I was chewing on rubber. I swallowed, drank the soup, and then said, "How much?" 30,000 mules. My first thought was that was a really tiny sum. Working and saving out the money ended up with a nest egg of 30,000 mules. It was as if that gorgeous world of Newton City was a lie. And the debt? 80,000 mules. Wait, more than twice? Well, that family has really struggled, so I don't want to hear it. I know everyone has their own issues. Particularly, my hometown was full of dudes like that. It was all stories of sadness and misery and uselessness. A lot of them were so terrible, they could only talk happily if they were detached from reality. Everyone's was pretty much the same. If that weren't the case, they wouldn't have come as far as the moon, moving to and fro over a few tens of thousands of mules. And Hagana? I asked again. What did Hagana say? Hagana had second thoughts when I initially proposed trading with real money. Regardless of whether I wanted to accept the money, her opinion was more important. She said she wanted to accept it. And then Lisa continued. She said she wanted to make a difference. I was easily able to imagine her nodding with those sharp eyes and a totally serious face. Success changed people. That statement was true, but Hagana probably selflessly wanted to help Chris and thought that it would work out. Even if you accept the money, what you're doing isn't really going to change, right? Lisa asked me. She was right. Even if we were to take in other people's money, what we'd be doing would remain essentially unchanged. However, there were two problems. There's a chance we'd lose money. I'm sure they know full well that fact. At least with this place, there was a sense of security, since there was someone like me who could put up the debt if the worst should happen. However, other people obviously didn't have an idiot squatter like me around. Slowly but surely, they'd get cornered by their debt. Well, they said that at this rate, they'd clearly never be able to pay off the debt, thus they wanted to entrust the money to you. There's another issue. What? I had paused for a second, but told myself this was something that had to be said, and proceeded to say it. Compensation. I pronounced that word clearly without running away. I looked Lisa right in the eye with all seriousness. There's the issue of compensation. I don't plan on working for free. Lisa's expression truly changed. She looked at me with an uneasy expression, holding back a huge amount of feelings, whether it was an urge to cry or an urge to yell angrily. Compensation. That's right. I took a risk to experiment with this. It wasn't easy getting such investment technology into my hands. Furthermore, I have an agreement to pay my due share of the usage fee for Hagana's program. I don't care what Chris's family's situation is, however, I won't do it without some sort of compensation. I am. I took a deep breath and recalled Barton's dignified demeanor. An investor. It was an extremely theoretical declaration, but I didn't retreat a centimeter from Lisa. I was even prepared to get in an argument and part ways. However, Lisa slowly opened her mouth at the end of the staring contest. That compensation, how much would it come out to be? 20% of earnings. The traditional cut hedge funds took. They gather money from their customers and trade according to the decisions of the fund manager. They would take 20% of the earnings. At my reply, Lisa twisted her lips as if she'd just eaten something bitter. You're not going to lower that anymore, right? I'm not doing this to play around. She scattered her strong emotions slowly with a deep breath. Her hair, which had started to stand on end, gradually settled, and then, at the end, she slowly closed her eyelids and gave a big sigh. I got it. I'll tell him that. Of course, I'll pay Hagana's compensation from that. Yeah, I don't doubt you on that. So then, what are you doubting me on? She was about to say something but caught herself, shut her mouth, and then smiled bitterly while refining what she wanted to say. In the name of Christ, I have to admonish avarice when I see it. I guess we never come to an agreement in this life. Yep. Although I also understand that you aren't just a slave to greed. At least it couldn't be someone who'd offer his own assets so easily. It was 50,000 moles. I was truly happy that I got complimented, and my lips formed a curve. Therefore, I'm not admonishing you. Furthermore, what? You are so annoyingly mature at this moment. No words. My face got more strained at Lisa's wry laugh. I scratched my head haphazardly and then reached for the rest of the meal. I'll handle Hagana. If you could do that, then that would be great. I didn't want to butt heads with Hagana over profits. Even if we only partially disagreed on something, I didn't think she'd be the type to back off. But how? Huh? Lisa asked me with a truly puzzled face from across the table. Who in the world did you meet? I intentionally scuffled down my meal with my mouth open wide and didn't reply. She'd probably hate me if I told her it was an arrogant resident of a greed-laden district. Nor did Lisa push on any further. Thanks for the meal. Having said that, I forcefully ended the conversation. The next day, Hagana accepted the compensation terms readily and relayed them to Chris over the phone. They too accepted readily. The terms could be illustrated thus. Let's say we took in the 30,000 moles and doubled its worth. Then 6,000 moles, 20% of the 30,000 mole profit, would be paid out to us as compensation, out of which I'd pay Hagana's share for the programming and retain 4,800 moles for myself. The small reward wasn't bad. On top of that, I was more consistent on this additional term to the agreement. That is, if we should lose money, then we wouldn't be held accountable. Anyhow, we weren't the ones who broached the subject initially. It would be too much to then hold us accountable for losses. They wanted to gamble, not us. Chris's dad was so huge he made Barton look like a midget, and he had the dignity of a laborer. Still, he accepted all of my demands and bowed deeply. Lisa had a sour look on her face, but it was we who had the skill and means. Being able to monetize such a skill to the maximum extent was a totally natural thing to do, I told myself proudly. Besides, Hagana didn't have even an ounce of the talk of compensation and what happened to losses in her head. Instead of that, while staring at the 30,000 mules Chris's dad bought, she muttered forcefully, I'll make it grow, lots. Hagana was right. I had gotten noticed by Barton, so it wasn't the time to be making lazy trades either. However, I myself was surprised at the fact that I didn't have to get worked up over Hagana's comment, let alone worry about it. Hagana's program was that good. With the exception of a few minutes a day, it was constantly monitoring and analyzing 1,000 stocks on the virtual market and 4,000 stocks on the real one. It was more accurate and performant than me trying to flip rapidly back and forth between all these various displays until my eyes dried out. It could perform calculations similar to what I can by staring at a single stock, but it can do that on many stocks in a fraction of a second. Furthermore, the statistical spread that I only vaguely understood could be calculated exactly, and it shortened the amount of time I had to spend per stock. Better still, I had stopped chasing stocks that had lopsided investment structures or felt strange. I had stopped chasing stocks that had lopsided investment structures or felt strange to me. Hagana's program could find one money tree after another without my needing to chase after dangerous stocks, so there was no point in taking the additional risk. My main workflow turned into buying and selling according to the program's instructions, then relaying what went well and what went poorly back to Hagana. Next to me would be Hagana puzzling over the results and solving arcane equations by hand, but I've stopped asking her day after day what she was doing. As days passed, the number of Greek letters in Hagana's electronic notebook increased. Beta, gamma, delta, theta, kappa? Really? Why is the word kappa in there? I have no words. All of them had mathematical meanings. What does kappa have to do with math meanings? But the only one I could understand was alpha. Amongst all of the mind-boggling Greek letters that populated investment theory, alpha was one which had a simple and clear meaning. It was simply how much better you were performing over the market average. There wasn't one thing more boring in the world of investing than the market average. Any monkey with money would be able to perform as well as the market average by investing a little into every stock on the market. Anyone with a brain would instantly understand that taking care to avoid falling stocks would lead to easily winning over the market average. Alpha was an indicator of how much smarter you were than a monkey. My alpha value had its ups and downs. However, Hagana was trying to establish with her formulas a way for me to keep my alpha consistently at my highest levels. It wouldn't be affected by my health, the situation, or my mood. She was working out consistent best performance using formulas. Hagana was sitting next to me, converting everything I did into formulas. Therefore, the more refined the program got, the more free time I got, and the more free time I got, the more I could trade calmly. Once I started trading calmly, I realized there were many things I didn't see before and many things I didn't have time to feel out. Maybe the reason for my slump before teaming up with Hagana was that I didn't have enough breathing room. It was probably like sharpening a knife to the point where the edge would be all chipped. If I had to say one thing I wasn't too happy with, it was probably that Hagana's program was so good that I stopped living on the edge while trading. If I had time to get involved in dangerous stunts, it was better to spend the time to earn money safely. Reading the news, looking at a company's financial affairs, and taking in the mood of the market, it wouldn't be strange to say that all-for-nothing trades were big gambles. Besides, right now we were entrusted with other people's money, and we were already hitting it big, so there was no reason to take such dangerous risks. Thus, I laughingly dismissed my thoughts of it being boring and empty as useless childish worries. My funds increased further over the week. I had 47 million mools in the virtual market and 92,000 in the real market. With the 30% increase, Chris's dad's part had increased to an amount just short of 40,000 mools. It wasn't a bad result on its own, but we were still far from resolving the debt situation. I had made haughty demands to Chris's dad, saying that I'd keep 20% of the gains and wouldn't take responsibility for losses. However, I was a little unsure whether the profits here would live up to my arrogance. A week after we took in her family's savings, Chris came by nervously to ask about the results. Chris was uneasy, but I think I was more uneasy. In front of an uneasy Chris, Hagana laid out the numbers. It has gone up to 39,200 moles. Hagana was stately in her proclamation. She was as stately as she was confident in the outcome. Chris was apparently way smarter than you could ever imagine from how silly she appeared. Therefore, she should have been able to realize that they were still far off from paying off their debts, given that there was only a 30% increase. With those haughty demands I thrust at them, it would have been expected that I would have gotten at least halfway to the final goal. While thinking about how Chris might pick up on that and tell me off, Chris, who looked like a curly-haired puppy, looked at Hagana whilst trembling. "Is that true?" "It's the truth." And then her legs gave way. Oh no, don't tell me she fainted. I extended my arms hurriedly, but Hagana was quicker to get down. "What I said is the truth." Hagana said that to Chris with a gentle expression on her face. She then took Chris's hands and squeezed them tightly. Chris stared blankly at her hands, and then at Hagana's face in front of her. "I can't believe what's happened," was written all over Chris's face. "What I said is the truth." Hagana repeated herself. But being able to pay off the loan was still a ways off. The 30,000 moles was what little Chris's dad could wring out as their last hope. And to take in that money under such haughty demands, but not even making 70% of the goal was something I had confidence in, I felt a bit guilty. And because this was my line of thinking, seeing Chris's surprising reaction may have made me think of something immature. I pondered that, not being able to see the picture and calculate gains and losses properly was why the poor would always remain poor. Staying in poverty meant that they didn't have any technical skills and talents. All they could sell was their time. Since all living things had the same amount of time available to them, their time was cheap. People with technical skills could get more money for their time, and people with innate talents were rarer and thus fetched an even higher price for their time. However, that road topped out with doctors and lawyers. To get over that hump, one would have to have someone else do the work. In other words, one would have to become a businessman. However, one didn't have to just get people to work. One could also just get money itself to work. Therefore, paying off just the interest little by little like Lisa would have normally been a dead end. To break out of poverty meant to take the opposite road, entrusting the nest egg to us and then being surprised that just a 30% increase was not the way to go. Those were my thoughts as I stared arrogantly down at Chris. However, Hagana said the following. "It's true, so you could buy shoes and clothes with the earned money." Oh, my jaw dropped unexpectedly, and from here on, it's going to go up even more. You could buy shoes, clothes, and bags, and I think there'll still be money left over. This isn't something to cry over. I'm not crying. And then Chris burst out crying, and Hagana was unusually flustered. However, the person most flustered by this was probably me. Hagana's words pierced deeply into my heart. You can buy clothes and shoes. She didn't say that the money wasn't enough to pay off the debt yet. Rather, she said something more disgustingly practical. Chris's clothing was in various sizes that didn't fit her, and her shoes were hole-filled sneakers that were even worse of a fit. Telling her that it was better to buy something to replace them would have been a ridiculously obvious thing to say. And yet, I didn't realize it until she had said it. It totally didn't enter my mind at all. To Chris and Hagana, money was just that. It was the reverse of when I thrust those bills at Hagana, saying what I said was the truth. Again, I failed to realize what money actually was. I didn't really understand what it meant to make money in order to live. Before I had stumbled into this church, I had certainly used the money I earned to pay for board. But that was simply a matter of saving up money like my family could. You can buy clothing and shoes. That was something dead obvious. For me, that statement only entered my mind when I was considering how I could save money. Ever since I was born, I had never had a situation where I couldn't buy something even if I really wanted it. These were things I took for granted. Hagana and Chris lived in a different world. Chris. Hagana called out her name. Hagana's emotionless expression was, in other words, the totally serious expression she'd always wear. I'll make it grow more. Rather than just plain crying, Chris was sobbing, staring at Hagana as if she had come across the savior of the world. Hagana nodded. My throat is like wearing out for a while. Hagana nodded slowly, and then raising one hand, she pointed at me. Hal is going to make it grow for us. What? I was flurried at the sudden mention, but Chris looked at me with trusting eyes. She had beautiful blue eyes. Staring into those eyes made me feel dirty about thinking all those bad things about her. I had recoiled, and Chris roughly wiped her face with her sleeves. Although she was sitting on the ground, she straightened herself and looked me straight in the eye. We place ourselves in your care. That was her polite statement. This was what we were really doing. Since our performance was enough to make Chris's legs give out, it was no surprise that more and more folks showed up to discuss similar deals. They were acquaintances of Chris and her dad who, not surprisingly, owed Toyama money. Among them were many whom Lisa knew and whose troubles Lisa knew, like the back of her hand. These guys had life savings of something like 10,000 mules or 30,000 mules, although some even had only a few thousand mules of savings. Since they were willing to give me 20% of the profits and I had to shoulder none of the losses, there was no reason for me to decline the offers. Because fundamentally, investing didn't really change with the amount of money, and the amount of effort required here wouldn't change, only the amount of profits. Furthermore, the feeling of helping someone out would be stronger as well. A total of 8 people came by to entrust us with their money, and in a short time our war chest increased to 200,000 mules. Now we can help lots of people. Hagana muttered that comment while looking at the register Lisa made of names and how much money was given. Even I, when looking at what a deplorable state Chris was in, felt it wasn't bad to help someone else make money. However, whenever someone came by with some money, a little part of me felt a bit more nervous. It was because larger amounts of money made it harder to perform quick trades. With 70,000 mules, it was possible to dump all of it into a single one of any number of stocks right away, but with 200,000 mules, the options were much more limited. If it weren't a large construction firm, bank, insurance firm, or an infrastructure firm, then just our own trades would move the prices. Therefore, we'd have to break the 200,000 mules into 3 or 4 parts and invest in many more stocks than we had been doing so before. Theoretically, that would work, but would it really be fine in the end? I was apprehensive, but then again, these were groundless fears. I had room to breathe. If I didn't have to do something unnecessary like pause and scrutinize each and every stock, then there certainly was breathing room for me. Furthermore, Hagana's program had been improving day by day, and I had started being able to just simply entrust it from the get-go. In other words, I started simply taking what the program spat out at face value,
and using it to lay on the trades. Just like before I partnered up with Hagana, I swapped between dizzying screens, not pausing to take a breath while camped out at the computer, and increased my profits endlessly. The gears were all properly greased and turning fine. The profits kept expanding, and the number of people who came to entrust us with their money kept increasing. Including profits, our war chest shot past 500,000 mules, with my share at 180,000 mules, including compensation. However, something had to be sacrificed. At 200,000 mules, my head was spinning, and when we hit 500,000 mules, I had to relegate the virtual markets to second priority. I was sure Barton was looking at this, but he should understand once I talked about the trades I was doing on the real market. Barton would probably be more interested in trades on the real market than the virtual one, and if I could show off my performance here, he should understand. And thus, on the investment contest front, we hit a standstill right around the time we broke 50 million mules. However, the thorn in my side was that I gradually started losing enjoyment out of the profits in the real market. Perhaps my senses had become numbed, or perhaps the energy involved in trading had not only tired me out physically, but mentally as well. After all, it was 8 hours of continuous trading that didn't allow for mistakes or playing around. It's like it's turning into a frickin' job, rather than a frickin' hobby. Right now, we had received the money from more than 10 people, and the fates of 20 to 30 people rested on us. Jesus Christ, now it's really turning into a frickin' job. And furthermore, many of those were people who'd be the type where the profits would finally let them buy a pair of shoes or some new clothes. Among them were obviously many kids Chris's age and some of Hagana's students. You couldn't even force me to say that it had gotten boring because it was no longer thrilling due to the lack of gambling involved. I couldn't make God damn my throat. I couldn't make recreational gambling trades. My head was stuffing. My head was stuffy and I felt sick to my stomach. Once afternoon trading ended, I didn't feel like doing anything. Because of how Hagana's program worked, there was no real reason to follow the market news, and I had run out of things to do. But I also didn't like just staring off into blank space, so I ran away to Saralt's place. Oh boy, you've certainly come by a lot recently. While I was staring at an old film from Earth, the partition door opened with Saralt's face peeking inside. The Godfather? You sure have some strange tastes. So, what do you want? Well, it's not that I had something particular in mind to talk about, but here. Saralt handed me a can of soda. Before accepting it, I asked sharply, would this cost extra? It's on the house, you bozo. In that case, I'll take it. I accepted the soda and opened it with a krish sound. I guess you like those films from Earth, eh? And not to mention they're all mafia films or war films. It's too moody. The chicks won't dig that. Oh, shut up. I sipped and returned my gaze to the movie. It was at the scene when some henchman missing a few brain cells decided to go undercover into enemy territory and got killed instantly. Why did that guy think the enemy wasn't going to suspect him? Be like me and watch more romantic stuff. Isn't everything you watch just porn? What'd you say? And then, after intentionally looking furtively left and right, he came forward to whisper into my ear. I finally got some nice stuff, featuring some girl who looks just like Hagana, you know. No words. Thinking that I'd be flustered by the comment, he swung his eyes over to glance at me. Wait, can't you react a bit more? You monkey. Yeah, but what's so good about these types of films? Wouldn't something with more explosions and metal against metal be more fitting for you youngsters? No words at all. I decided to ignore him. I liked mafia and war films because I understood how they operated. And besides, it wasn't something where a lone hero could solve all his problems. The characters were connected by thick threads that you could almost reach out and touch, and they were pulled by these strings as if they were puppets dancing on the screen. There was something on the stock market quite like it. The players of the stock market also had clear principles of behavior, but just one person wasn't enough to do anything significant. I liked imagining and watching such scenarios unfold with people reaching for clear goals. The mafia or an army squad making decisions so logical that they were illogical for the sake of their pride, or friends made me tremble with excitement. There were basically no sudden surprise developments. Even if there were one, it would have been just the first crank that put the gears of the plot into motion. On the stock market, it was like hearing some unexpected news, and once that story hit, the game was on to see who'd win and who'd lose. Totally boring. Sorrel butted in with a line while I was watching the film, pondering quietly to myself. Oh, grow up. I'm taking good care of my youthfulness here. 'Cause Earth dogs are well known for having a mother complex for their beloved Mother Earth, am I right? Gravity is love, you know. Having said so, he gave up and went back to the counter. I returned my gaze to the screen, but he suddenly stopped and poked his big head back into the booth. Oh yeah, there's rumors about you two, you know. There were many ways to decipher an ambiguous statement. However, I did look back over at Sorrel because his tone was oddly serious. Huh? About you and Hagana. What are you, a gossiping grade schooler? I told him in a fed-up tone. He was dumbstruck at first, but then smiled wryly. No, I don't mean that. Then what do you mean? I heard that you had been collecting people's money to use. To use? That line felt like the spark that triggered a war between rival mafia factions. What about it? Does Lisa know? Of course. I shifted my gaze back to the screen. Rumors. Had people really been talking about us? Wait, Lisa really knows? Cripes, man. Yes, and Cripes or Christ? Man, yes, and plus, originally I didn't feel like using other people's money, but I did it first for Lisa. Sorrel's eyes shot wide open, and he leaned forward with his big head. Lisa owed people money? You're up too close. Yeah, you didn't know? I didn't. She lost a valuable book she borrowed from the university, and thus had a debt of 50,000 moles for it, and was out of options. Oh. Sorrel slapped his hands on his giant-ass head. If she had told me, you'd then be able to pay it off? You'd then be able to pay it off? After I asked, Sorrel was about to say something, then kept his mouth shut. He was probably trying to put on some meaningless show of vanity. Man, so that was the case, huh? But that program I made for Hagana, you're making money with that? Plus my investment prowess. I thought I said progressed, or whatever. Plus my investment prowess. Well, let's put that aside. What, you doubting me? Don't get mad. The emails Hagana wrote were full of Hal said this and Hal said that, so there's no way I doubt you. That revelation totally caught me off guard. Well, that aside, what I'm trying to say is that you should be careful. What? People also know you swing by these parts, you know. You could be tough physically, but that might not work against some of these dangerous people out there. What, like hackers? There's also that. At any rate, it'd be a good idea to keep quiet about collecting up that much money. this is the moon after all, well, I wouldn't mind if you think of this as just some nosy guy's advice. No words. He was so serious, I was at a loss for words. Ah, okay. You don't know what's going to happen in the world. It wouldn't hurt to be a bit careful. After saying that last line, he slapped me lightly on the shoulder and went back to the counter. Certainly, letting people around you know you've been working with money that you collected had no merit whatsoever. However, I couldn't just return my money at this point, and the people who gave money to me were really in deep trouble financially. I had to do it, and if I didn't, it was obvious that what terrible things would happen. I went back to watching the film. I had no choice but to move forward, like I had to follow some mafia bylaw. 10 minutes later, I was totally absorbed in the film and forgot about Sorolt's words. After I finished watching, I returned to the church. Okay. Just double checking if I missed out on the words. Alright, anyway. I am going to end this here for now. So, next part, well, let's see how this goes when it comes to like collecting money. Will the rumor actually be leaked out publicly or whatnot? I don't know. Spread it out. So like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.